Hey, welcome to Grounded with Jon Tester and Maritza Giorgio. Happy Friday. It's Friday. We don't do these on Friday very often.
No, it's good. It's not Good Friday, but it's a Good Friday. Okay. So it's good.
Good Friday. Okay, so today we wanted to kind of dig in and take a closer look at our national defense and security. We have we'll call him the Honorable Erik Raven. He was a former Undersecretary of the Navy at one point. He actually served as the principal advisor on the Senate Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, which you were the chair of. Am I wrong?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yep.
correct.
You
And at one point, and then we also have Kate Käufer joining us for this conversation, who is majority clerk of that committee. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting conversation. I expect to learn a lot because this is not an area that I'm well versed in.
Well, we hope it's going to be interesting. Look, it's going to be an opportunity to either nerd out or let people know what's really going on. These folks uh, were working and worked for years on the Defense Appropriations Bill, which funds the Defense Department, which funds the national security of this country from a defense perspective. It'll be fun to talk about them, about where we were. They're both in the private sector now, but where we were when they were heads of that committee and where we are today from their perspective. So it'll be fun, I hope. I hope it'll be interesting and semi-entertaining, but hopefully you don't get down the weeds so damn far that people go, "Oh, enough of this crap. I can't handle this anymore," and click off.
Well, they
Rather,
might
I
do
hope.
that every week anyway with us. You never know.
Well, it could be. It could be, but national defense is a big issue. That the appropriations bill that they worked on, the subcommittee that I was chair of, is a massive damn bill. And there's as much money in that single subcommittee appropriations bill as there is in all the other subcommittees combined. So
Uh,
it's a big bill. It's an important bill. It's a bill that has to be done right, or it puts our national defense at risk. So it'll be
well,
fun
and
to
this
have.
is something that we don't often get a like clear peek inside of, or behind the curtain of. So I'm excited to have that conversation, ask all my questions. So many questions I have. All right, let's get into some headlines. We'll get to Epstein in a minute because, wow, that is the story that just will not go away. But first, I want to talk about this moment on camera when the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, fact checked President Donald Trump. This happened on camera. Trump tried to take Powell to task over the cost of renovations at the Fed headquarters. And Powell just wasn't having it. He took out his glasses. He looked at this number that Trump was claiming it costs for the renovations. And he said, no, 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 that included a third building that was done 5 years ago. They kind of went back and forth a minute. My friend Von Hilliard at MSNBC said that this seems to continue to set the stage for President Trump to try to claim that Powell has engaged in fraud in this renovation. What do you think?
Well, Jerome Powell, chair of the Federal Reserve, is like an accountant on steroids. I mean, this guy deals with numbers all the time. Okay, so for President Trump to pull numbers out of the air and say this is what it costs to a guy who deals with numbers all the time and has to make sure those numbers add up to common sense, um, he got called out. Um, I like Jerome Powell. I think Jerome Powell has done a good job as Fed chair. I think that he would be a great loss if the president pulls him out for the economy and for working families around this country. I think it'd be a huge mistake. I think politicizing the Fed would be a huge mistake. So for Fed Chair Powell to bring out the numbers and say, yeah, yeah, well, this is bullshit. Um, Although he didn't exactly say that, um, is perfect sense, and it's what he does. Jerome Powell is a man of high intelligence and uh, just an incredibly good person that wants to do the right thing. Um, all his decisions he's made are the ones I agree with. No. Um, did he make some I liked? Yeah. But in the end, you do not want to politicize the Fed. You politicize our money system in this country, and it will be a train wreck. And it'll be like the tariffs, for Christ's sakes, where there's no sort of order, no sort of plan, no sort of direction, just willy-nilly doing things to interest rates and the economy that meet political agendas but don't meet economic agendas, which is where we are.
Okay,
And who
so
knows? He may use it to claim that there was fraud, but I don't buy it. I don't think it passes the smell test at all. If there's any fraud going on, it's not in the Fed.
well, and Powell has said that Trump cannot fire him, but Trump continues to kind of flirt with that idea. And he posted on Truth Social after this encounter and said, quote, "The cost overruns are substantial, but on the positive side, our country is doing very well and can afford just about anything, even the cost of this building." Okay, so am I crazy or did we just cut like a ton of programs to save money to give tax cuts to the wealthy?
Yeah, not only that, but go out and do some shopping. Price of gas ain't a buck 98. I'll tell you that. The price of eggs have dropped a little, but not much. Inflation continues to go up much higher than the previous administration, by the way. When I go out and buy stuff, I'm always shocked at the cost moving forward. The tariff stuff is starting to take hold. We're starting to see loss of inventory and in businesses. This is going to have dramatic impacts. Look, I guess if you have people around you that will only tell you what you want to hear, and you aren't out actually seeing what's going on in the economy, you can say things like, "This is the greatest economy that's ever happened. We can afford anything." But the truth is, I see a lot of signs out there as a farmer in north central Montana that are disturbing when it goes to our economy, by the way.
Yeah, I've been in a few stores this week too, and there's not a lot of inventory. There's not a lot of inventory, and they're pretty quiet. And these are in big cities that I've been in, so we'll continue to watch that. All right, the
And
story
and
that
and the point is there, Maritza, if a store doesn't have inventory, they're out of business. If they don't have things to sell, there's no profit margin because you're not selling anything to have a profit margin. So the impact of this, and by the way, not unlike rural healthcare, these stores close down. Most of them are mom and pop stores. They won't be reopening, and that'll have long-term impacts on our economy.
So this is a story that will not go away no matter how many times the president talks about Obama or her emails. So sources told the Wall Street Journal that AG Pam Bondi told the president his name is in the Epstein files. This apparently happened in May, and we should say shortly after that, that was that Elon Musk bomb that he dropped on X claiming the same thing. Meanwhile, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche met with Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell for hours on Thursday. Says he'll continue today on Friday. Important to note that Todd Blanche was the president's personal lawyer before this job. We're also seeing a steady stream of Republicans just calling for transparency around the Epstein files, but to avoid a vote on a measure to force the release of those files, the House adjourned for summer recess early. They're not coming back till September. Oh, and as you predicted, Senator, a judge denied the DOJ request to unseal grand jury transcripts in Florida. All right, have at it, JT.
I get to have at it.
Have at it.
So for anybody out there that thinks that Todd Blanche is interviewing Maxwell, I never can pronounce her first name, but Maxwell to uh, find out what really went on, you're smoking something illegal. The truth is he's there trying to find a loophole, just like they do in the Constitution, to try to make it so it doesn't look like anybody did anything wrong with Epstein, including the President of the United States. So it's interesting. If he's able to do that, that means Ghislaine Maxwell would be able to walk from
Ghislaine.
prison.
Ghislaine.
Ghislaine? Okay, all right. So I got it. It's spelled Ghislaine. That's Ghislaine.
Ghi Ghislaine.
Okay. So anyway, maybe she's going to get out of prison because if there isn't anything that went on that was bad, then what was she doing in the slammer? So I don't know, but I will say it is more than ironic that people in Congress are going true to form as they've done the last 6 or 7 months and saying one thing. They're affected by this, say one thing and do another. Say, oh, yeah, we need transparency. Oh, but by the way, I don't want to vote on anything that would force transparency. And we're going to hit the road. And, there's going to be a few of us who go out and talk about this, but most of us, we're going to have our lips sealed. And if somebody asks us about it, we're just going to say, hey, we had to leave early because, I don't know, it was too hot in Washington, D.C., which starts, by the way, in April. So they could
I
have left in
just
April, but would have got the same amount of stuff done, by the way, and except maybe not all the bad stuff they got done. So, um, look, this continues to go on. There are folks, a lot of folks in President Trump's base from the MAGA side of things that want to see if the deep state is running things. And look, the Republicans run the House, they run the Senate, they run the presidency. Uh, if the information isn't released, maybe they ought to look in the mirror if they want to see the deep state.
also, I just think that it's, foolish at this point to think that this is going to go away. Jeffrey Epstein died in 2019. I mean, we are almost 6 years to the date of his death, and it has not gone away, it's only intensified. So I don't think going home for a month or month and a half is going to settle people down. We'll see what happens next. Meanwhile, the FCC gave the okay for the $8 billion merger between Paramount and Skydance after both companies made concessions to the White House and the president. Paramount is the parent company of CBS, which canceled the Colbert Show last week, and in a very viral moment, I'm sure we'll see more about it today. The creators of South Park, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, they just signed a deal with Paramount, and then they went after the president in an episode that is releasing, putting him or a cartoon version of him in bed with Satan. They are doubling down and basically saying, "What are you gonna do, Paramount?"
Uh-oh, look out.
Uh-oh.
The president might demand that they get rid of South Park. Look,
They just
I
signed a big deal, though. If they get rid of
yeah,
South Park, I think they're out of money.
well, who knows? I mean,
Who
why would you get rid of Colbert for Christ's sakes? If you got financial problems with late night television, that would have been negotiated a long, long time ago. It's pretty obvious what they did, and we've talked about this before on how mainstream media is they're losing, and it's unfortunate because I depend upon them, being a person that's dependent upon them my whole life. And I know a lot of people depend on podcasts, Substack, and all that, which that's great because we're on that. But the truth is, the mainstream media also provides some, and they just lost all their mojo. I mean, what the hell? I mean, uh, it's not that I'm in love with Colbert, but it really pisses me off when companies do things for political reasons so that they can make money. They shouldn't be making money. They shouldn't be in business. They don't have any values, if they don't have any morals, if they don't have the reason to do the right thing, well, then screw them. And that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I am curious if Colbert's run goes, throughout when they said it will go, and I'll be watching to see what happens to South Park. And lastly, today, I'm sure there will be more news that breaks after we record this, but the Washington Post reported that the Pentagon's independent watchdog received evidence that contradicts Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's claim about Signalgate. The evidence apparently shows the information that Hegseth put in that Signal chat came from a classified email that was labeled secret. The Trump administration has said repeatedly that the Signal chat had no classified information in it regarding those strikes in Yemen. You'll remember the Atlantic's editor was unintentionally included in that chat.
Couple things. First of all, I'm surprised the Pentagon has any independent watchdogs left. Number one. That's a good thing. Number two, that they have them. Number two, are they playing the whole world for fools, really? I mean, this was absolutely a breach of top secret information that happened to work out fine, that was used many times before this as a platform that shouldn't have been used for delivering top secret information. And I can guarantee you that our enemies in this world, China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran in particular, know how to access this information. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think they learned any lesson with the Signalgate stuff. I don't trust them. I think they're still doing this crap on non-classified platforms, and I think it's going to cost us if they don't wake the fuck up. This is important shit, and it's secret for a reason. And for these guys to be so cavalier about all this and deny that it happened. Where's Congress at? Has Congress done any investigation? Have they done any bring people in and ask them questions about this? Have they done a bipartisan program to find out what the hell happened? No, Congress is still drawing their 165, 170, maybe it's more than that now, $1,000 a year, and they don't do jack shit. And this is something that they should have hearings on, and they should get to the bottom of it. Just like they should get to the bottoms of why ICE threw Alex Padilla on the floor. And when Christy Nome says, I didn't know who it was. Come on. If you don't know who that is, what the hell are you doing in government? It's ridiculous. So this stuff goes on and on. The tariffs, same thing. There's no hearings, no nothing. They just let the executive branch do whatever the hell they want. They forgot to read the Constitution on what Article 1 means. And they just sit back and say, oh, what the hell? If we say anything bad against him, then he's going to come after us and we're going to have a primary and I might not have a job. But why the hell do you have a job if you're not going to do anything? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I keep thinking about that too when I'm reading about what's happening with that El Salvador prison, and they released a bunch of folks back into Venezuela. They're talking now about the conditions that they were held in, and it can only be described as torture. And where's Congress?
And American taxpayers are paying for that. You and I and everybody that's watching this are paying for that El Salvador prison. By the way, how much it cost? I don't know. I bet you ask anybody in Congress, they can't tell you how much it costs. Where are the hearings? Where are they finding out what's going on? There's supposed to be checks and balances. They're supposed to be spending our money in a way that meets the needs of this country. And Congress is AWOL, gone, history, kaput. Maybe that's why Tillis isn't coming on our program. I don't.
Hey, yeah, Senator Tillis, we want to hear from you. I'll try them again today. We're working on it. We're working on that one. All right, so that's it for headlines. Let's pivot now to our chat for today, focusing on national defense and security. Senator, take it away.
So we've got a couple guests here that I don't want this going to your guys' head, by the way, but Erik Raven and Kate. Say your last name, Kate, so I don't screw it up. Okay.
For Senator.
Okay.
Käufer.
Sounds good.
Käufer.
I'm just going to call you Kate and Erik. But these folks worked with me on the defense subcommittee on appropriations. They were and still continue to be critical components of our defense structure. When they served as staffers, they literally did the work, and it's one of the reasons I believe that we had defense bills that were structured in a way that held the defense um, industry and the defense community itself accountable, while we spend hundreds of billions of dollars. I'm going to start out. Both of you are no longer in government; you're in the private sector, and you guys still continue. And correct me if I'm wrong. Continue to monitor the defense appropriations bill in a major league way. From each of your perspectives, have things changed much? Are they like they were when you guys were lead staffers, or are you seeing? Are you seeing? Well, I'll just ask: are you seeing Congress need to play a bigger role in the defense thing, or is it entirely being driven by the executive branch? So the process is, folks, for you guys that know, the executive branch brings in their budget, and then Congress screws with it and does the budget they want. Is that still going on?
So, first of all, Mr. Chairman, and I think that's the last time I'm going to call you Mr. Chairman. It's John from now on, and Murray, it's a real pleasure to join you today. And boy, what a big question. Um, I started off in Congress working as a staffer in 1996, and the changes of how the defense budget gets dealt with at the highest levels have been really significant, and I think it's only accelerated in the last couple of years. And I'd say there's a couple of factors that really draw that out. First of all, it's been standard practice for decades and decades that, just like you said, John, the president delivers a budget proposal to Congress. Congress looks at it for a series of months, makes some changes, makes sure it reflects congressional priorities. And for many, many years, it was done on time and efficiently. And over the last, decade and a half, that process has slowed down. Well, for the first time ever this year, Congress really couldn't reach a decision on passing a full year budget for the military. Passed what's called a continuing resolution, which is more or less a rubber stamp of last year's budget. It's hard to imagine any business doing the same thing. Hey, let's just do the same thing we did last year and expect success. So that has been number one. The biggest change is that it's gotten harder and harder for Congress to complete its work on what used to be seen as a must do budget bill.
What's your view, Kate?
Well, let me just echo Eric's introductory comments. It's a pleasure being here. Appreciate the chance. I would, wholeheartedly agree with what he said, and I would add to that one more element, which is not only as this process has devolved somewhat over the last decade or so, the urgency and the threat has accelerated, right? And so we see quicker turnaround timelines for decision making, certainly as it relates to investing in new technologies and accelerating modernization of our military, while at the same time Congress has struggled to pass a budget, on time and in a comprehensive manner. So you have a bit of a compounding element there with just an operational urgency that is at the highest levels it's been over the last 20 years or so.
Look, the defense budget has been kind of slightly below inflation for, several years now. Meanwhile, China's investment in its military capabilities and its ambitions, not only in the Pacific but across the world, are really going through the roof. I mean, they are building a lot of capabilities at an astounding rate. Now, the good news is that the United States, in terms of our military, started off way far ahead of any other competitor. I mean, we have had the best technology, the best training, the best troops for many, many decades. But what we're seeing is China is closing that gap. And so this question of how can the government best fund its military and what's the process and what are the roadblocks isn't just a political issue. It's a national security issue. As our adversaries are catching up to where we are, and then project that out a few years. And I think that American people should be paying really close attention to that.
So we'll get to AI in a minute then, since you brought this up. The last CR that was passed was plussed up pretty significantly for military defense. Is that correct? There's certainly dollars that were added to it if you add both funds together that makes the final figure close to $1 trillion, right? Help me out here.
So yes, sir. We've got a couple of um, big dollar chunks that are coming all together. So let me maybe see if I can untangle it a little bit. So in March, as Erik said, Congress passed for the first time a full year continuing resolution for the Department of Defense, which essentially locks in a prior year budget, right? Without significant adjustment. Congress did include a couple of I'll call it escape hatches for DoD. So they did give them a couple $1 billion more. They did give DoD some flexibility for starting new programs, which you normally don't do in a stopgap budget. But as Erik said, was certainly not enough to keep up with inflation. Shortly thereafter, Congress provided another tranche of spending for the Department of Defense as part of the reconciliation bill, or what people call the one big beautiful bill, that provided another 150-ish or so billion for the Department of Defense. And at the same time, Congress is now reviewing the next Department of Defense budget, which is due on October 1st. And that will presumably give DoD $1 trillion or so to execute.
John, one critical point here is when we talk about the defense budget being at or near $1 trillion, the devil's in the details here. So the normal annual budget for the Department of Defense is about $850 billion a year now. And then there is this one-time reconciliation shot in the arm of 150 billion. That gets you to that 1 trillion number. But here's the really important part. Um, that reconciliation money, I mean, it's a lot of money. Nobody's going to turn up their nose at $150 billion. That's a significant investment, but it's a one-time shot in the arm. So the big question that a lot of national security experts and defense companies and a lot of other people are asking right now is, wait, are we going to continue at $1 trillion next year and the year after? Or are we going to go back down to 850 billion? It's like, hey, if you're working somewhere and you get your take home pay is $850 a week, you work a bunch of overtime one week and get another $150. Hey, that's great. Nobody's turning their nose up. But don't go spend it all in one place unless you know that you're actually getting a raise and it's not just that you put a lot more effort in for 1 week to get the higher paycheck.
Reminds me
Yeah,
of
and if
some
I
of the
could,
complaints about like COVID funding, right? Like people said, this is great, we have all this money, but don't get used to it.
Exactly.
yeah, and if I can maybe pull the thread a little bit more on what Erik said is, and so when you started the conversation about the industrial base and accountability of the industrial base, the challenge for the industrial base is, yes, we see this massive influx of $1 trillion or so in defense, but not knowing what happens, next year, 2 years, 5 years from now, because it's not quite clear what the 5-year plans for the Department of Defense are. How is that going to help the industrial base, or how can we then use this influx of cash to right size the industrial base for what we need them to do, right? So how do you convince them to invest in a workforce, to expand production capacity? We've heard a lot about the supply chain being very fragile, and so to Eric's point, right now we had this reconciliation influx of cash, not knowing if that's going to happen again next year. How does the department and how does the industrial base plan their investments for the year after this year?
So typically when you're in government, you guys know this, if you've got one-time money, which is what this 150 billion may or may not be, you use it for one-time expenses. Was is the military base looking at that? I mean, so let me give you an example. There is no doubt that the military base, the folks that build our ships, our airplanes, weaponry, everything needs needs to be updated to meet the 21st century demands that are out there. Was there any guidance given by Congress that say, hey, this is going to be one-time money only? So use it for one-time expenses to expand the industrial base or whatever it might be. I'm talking about the machines, the things that you buy once, you don't have to buy every year. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the answer is it's kind of a mixed bag. 'Cause Congress didn't just hand over 150 billion as a blank check. It put it in kind of like categories and pots. And some of those categories are very specific. Go out and buy a couple of more of these destroyers or some more of these airplanes. Very specific. Go buy this thing. Other pots of money are a lot more flexible. And I would say the one that immediately comes to mind is there's about $25 billion to jumpstart investment in Golden Dome for America, President Trump's vision of a missile shield covering all of the U.S. Trump himself has said that this is going to cost $170 billion, and there's a lot of estimates that are substantially higher than that. So that's just a down payment. That $25 billion, it's a lot of money, but it's not going to complete the project. So again, kind of the big question here that everybody's asking is, where's the rest of the money going to come from? Because if the future budgets are flat, that's going to mean some really hard decisions about cutting programs and taking money from other places. Or is it budget going to go up? And that's where you get the additional money. So in some cases, it's very clear, just go buy some more of these items, X, Y, and Z. And some cases, this additional money is just a down payment, and everybody's trying to figure out where the next installment is going to come from.
Yeah, and if I could add one little bit of context is, the $1 trillion defense budget is a record high investment in national defense. That does not mean that it's $1 trillion investment in buying weapons, modernizing our military, right? So roughly a third or so of that goes to pay our troops. Roughly, a little less than another third goes to, pay for driving tanks and flying aircraft and steaming ships. So the actual part of that is invested in modernizing our military is probably less than half of that $1 trillion. And to Eric's point, there are some one-time investments when you talk about upgrading a facility or modernizing a production facility, but there are several investments that will require sustained funding or additional funding over the next couple of years, and it is not quite clear yet where those funds will come from.
Okay, I want to pull on the Golden Dome thread a little bit, because I've and admittedly, I don't know a lot about this, so I'm going to ask you guys to explain this to us like you're talking to my 13-year-old, so we can all follow along. Because I think we hear buzzwords like Golden Dome, or you get into the billions and trillions of dollars, and people's eyes kind of glaze over sometimes. So the Trump administration says this will cost about $175 billion. The goal is to intercept missiles through space-based missiles, but the Congressional Budget Office estimated it might cost more than $500 billion. Other estimates come in even higher. So, what should we know about this Golden Dome project? And do you think is it effective? Would it be effective for us here in the United States? And is it the best use of that money?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say about Golden Dome, I'll just call it like a really ambitious program, and I'll explain it in a couple reasons. Um, I think when a lot of people think about threats to the United States, sometimes they go back to kind of like the Soviet Union. Is the Soviet leader going to push the red button and a bunch of long range missiles, make their way and threaten us? Um, the picture today is a lot more complicated than it was just a few decades ago. The threats that are out there that Golden Dome is meant to address includes everything from those long range intercontinental ballistic missiles, whether they come from North Korea or China or Russia or somewhere else, to a lot more sophisticated threats. In the last decade or so, the missile technology used by a lot of our adversaries has really advanced. So it used to be if the Soviets were going to shoot a missile at us, it goes up in a certain way and it comes down in a certain way, and we can detect exactly where it's supposed to come, and so that makes it easier to shoot down. Still a big challenge, but now some of these missile technologies, think about a missile goes up and it releases a warhead, and these are called hypersonic glide vehicles. They can do all these like crazy turns. They're really fast. They're much faster than anything else out there. And so the same solutions that you might use to shoot down a long range rocket just don't work on some of this new technology. And so you have to develop something entirely new to be able to tackle that threat. Now, one opportunity out there is if you put enough satellites in space that have their own missiles on them, maybe when that rocket launches, you can intercept it in the first minute of flight. Oh, that's really interesting, but it's also really hard because it means you have to have a satellite right over that launch site at every minute of every day of every week of every month. And so that's where when you see these estimates that are more like, many hundreds of billions, that's because some of the analysts looking at that are saying like, oh, this is way more complicated than anything we've done before. And complexity equals dollars. Maybe Einstein said that or something like that. But the complexity goes way up, the cost estimates go way up. And so there's a lot. There's also a range of other threats, and you need different kinds of technologies to handle those different threats. So you're really looking at Golden Dome not just being kind of like what Reagan described as a strategic defense initiative to scare the Russians and defeat their missiles. You have to put together like probably 3, 4, or 5 really advanced technological capabilities and have them all work together seamlessly to deliver this idea of protecting the whole United States from these range of advanced threats.
I think the bumper sticker is shooting down an incoming missile with a missile is really, really hard. And so you really want to have, you hear this term kind of system of systems sometimes, which means you need to have lots of different things to build out this Golden Dome protective shield. You need, as Erik said, you need the radars. Some of them can be space-based, some can be more terrestrial-based or airborne. You need different kinds of interceptors for different kinds of threats. And then, depending on how many of each of these systems you buy, that's what's going to impact the price tag. But the technology, it's already out there, right? So it really comes down to kind of fusing this all together and making sure all the different components of Golden Dome talk to each other so that they can actually provide a truly effective shield.
So the communication part of this is also critically important, not just the numbers, but how these different systems communicate to one another. Whose call is that? Is that all just part of the Golden Dome 25 billion so far, or is this communication going to be utilized? The communication systems that you're going to utilize would currently exist, and they're plussing those dollars up, or how are they doing it?
So Trump appointed a
Fine.
leader, General Gutlein. He's a Space Force leader. He's been involved in the DoD weapons acquisition process for a good part of his career. So he was appointed and just recently confirmed to take the job as a four-star program manager to answer exactly those sort of questions. How is all this
Yeah.
stuff going to work together? What are the priorities? And this is a moving target. I mean, the pressure to deliver solutions is probably higher than I've ever seen in any defense program in the last several decades. And so General Goodline, he has to come up with a plan. And he's been tasked in the next 60 days to come up with a plan, like what are all these technologies that we need to pursue, and how do they work together? That's a really short time period to come up with a really complex plan. But he
60
has said
days?
60 days to come up with a plan, but then it's going to be a long, long time to kind of like field all the technologies. This is just identifying like what this is and how it works. But the one thing that he has said that's going to be a top priority is this idea of communications and like how all things work together, because you're going to need satellites to detect missile launches. You're going to need radars on the ground to track those missiles. You're going to need things to shoot missiles at the going after the missiles. Like all of this stuff has to talk to each other. And oh, by the way, there's somebody in Colorado who's going to be looking at a computer screen trying to make sense of all this. So it better work. You don't want that guy, getting the wrong information. But John Gutlein has said, like, hey, priority number one coming into this job is getting the command and control, off to a good start. But it's gonna be a long time to even figure out that piece of it.
The good news is that we're not exactly starting from scratch, right? We talk about the $25 billion that has been added to the budget for this. Um, but that is building on, certain existing technologies, certainly on the command, control, and communication side. So as John Goodline or as John Goodline pulls this plan together, he is certainly informed by what we currently already have fielded and what technologies the military is already working on, and think of the 25 billion as an opportunity to jumpstart and accelerate further development to fill out kind of the gaps in the plan that he's putting together.
I'm guessing, Senator, it's not just a concept of a plan that he needs to put together. He probably needs a real plan.
Well, it always helps if you've got a real plan. And might I add, workable in that sentence too, a real workable plan. So, we talk about cyber.
Sure.
Is it still a big deal? We've, I mean, the truth is, I'm a bit worried because there's a lot of folks that may not be with the agency anymore because of being laid off or just pissed off and leaving. So where are we at in the area of cyber threats and cyber warfare, and as long as you're going in that vein, where's AI? Is there money dedicated to AI in this budget? Is AI part of the conversation?
So I would say, in short, the answer to your question is yes to all of the above.
Great. Are you
what
screwed?
what
Is that what you said?
Yeah. What and this touches a little bit on what we just talked about with respect to Golden Dome. How do you buy a pound of cyber safety or cyber security or cyber operations, right? I mean, we tend to measure our military strength by counting weapon systems that we feel like we count ships, we count aircraft, we count missiles. And so while those are important metrics, they are certainly not the only metrics. And as you well know, all those weapon systems I just listed are really only as effective as their support network, right? The logistics, the training, the personnel, and certainly, the cybersecurity as we develop more and more software enabled or software defined weapons. Having cyber secure communications links and networks is ever more important. But it is not something that is easily quantifiable. And it is not something where it's very easy or straightforward to define success. And so the key really for the Department of Defense and for Congress as they continue to look at cyber, IT, software, innovation, AI, machine learning is really to not just focus on the buzzword, but really focus on the added capability or the added value that these investment dollars generate for us.
Hey, just to back up a second, and I think many of your listeners have probably heard and thought about cyber and, is this like emerging technology and, what does it mean for our national security and all that? Let me just back up and make sure we're all level set on kind of like when we talk about cyber, what are the things we're actually talking about? Now, we just had this discussion about Golden Dome, about how everything has to be connected, space on the ground and all that stuff. All those computers talking to each other needed to be able to do their job efficiently. It's not just a military problem. We see this in our life. I see you got your computer right there in the background. You got to check your stock quotes with your huge portfolio and figure out what the weather is going to be to know if you're going out in your tractor on any given weekend or something like that. Like all of that relies on all these networks that cross the military, the civilian, how government does its job, commercial industries, and all that. And there's kind of a couple things in cyber to be aware of. One is that first, you have to defend it. You got to defend those networks. You got to keep the bad guys out. But what are the bad guys trying to do? They're trying to get into those networks really to do one of two things. Either listen what's going on and get information that they can't get elsewhere, so kind of like a spying mission, or drop some kind of breadcrumbs in those networks. So if one day you need to turn something off, you got the switch already in the system. It's already baked in. So whether that's turning off a military satellite or turning off a water treatment plant, that's the cyber threat that I think a lot of people are thinking about. Now, that could be really scary. Think about waking up one day and your electricity doesn't work, or your power, your water isn't working, or Wall Street goes down. I mean, the stakes could be very, very high. And there was one intelligence leader. He ran the National Security Agency about 10 or 15 years ago. He was asked about cyber, and he said, if cyber was a soccer game, the score would be 515 to 498 because there's no defense. It's all about the offense. The more you can be out there doing things against your adversaries, that's how you win in cyber. So where are we today? I mean, almost every other day you see something in the paper about vulnerability discovered in some email system, or another government system was hacked somehow. I mean, the offense is still uh, driving this discussion, but I don't want to unduly terrify folks, because one thing really sticks in my mind. When Russia was poised to invade Ukraine back, 3.5 years ago, there were a lot of national security experts that said this is going to be the first cyber war. Russia's going to go in and take down all the networks and just, completely obliterate Ukraine on day one just by flipping the switch on everything. Yeah, there were a lot of cyber attacks, but you know what? Here we are 3 years later, and for many reasons, like Ukraine is still fighting the fight. That those cyber capabilities didn't take down the whole nation. In fact, when we think about the conflict in Ukraine right now, we think more about drones and unmanned technologies and things like that, rather than cyber dominating the battlefield. So what are we doing about it? First of all, it's very clear we, the United States, we're still on the offense. We have incredible capabilities to get into other people's networks and snoop around and maybe drop some breadcrumbs if that day comes. The defense is going to be really hard. And you know what? This starts with it's not just a government problem. It's not just what the military or intelligence community or Homeland Security can do to defend against the threats. That's part of it. But everybody has their own part to play because as you're using your laptop, you get that suspicious email in your inbox. You click on a link. You don't know whether that virus that you just allowed into your system is from some scammer who wants to drain your bank account or somebody in China trying to use your computer as a platform to go do something else. So, just real basic stuff, that the Best Buy, Nerd Patrol always talks about keeping your computer updated and don't click on suspicious links. That's part of what everybody has to do. It's not just a government problem. Like everybody has a hand in this, in trying to defeat some of these efforts by our adversaries to worm our way into our cyber systems. It starts everywhere.
What do you make of the cuts, like the cuts to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and then on top of those cuts, I mean, we see reports that a third of the workforce has already left that agency. I mean, is there room for private companies to fill the gaps here?
I mean, we do have a lot of private companies who are just doing amazing things. In fact, look, I just said everybody has their part to play in cybersecurity. It's not just a government thing. But going back to one of John's questions, maybe like one of the big holy grail things out there that could really turn the conversation on this is how AI can play to cyber defense. So, right now, the way your computer works is if you get a virus, there's already like a thumbprint in your virus scanner. It knows what to look for. If you have AI doing cyber defense, you don't have to have the thumbprint of that virus that's infecting your computer or a government computer or something else. AI being able to say like, hey, something's wrong here. I don't know exactly what it is, but like antibodies in your body, like going after some new virus or something like that. Something's wrong. Let's spring into action. So new technology can really be part of this, and a lot of that innovation is coming from the private sector.
We're getting to a point where I don't know if you want to, Maritza. We do these interviews and she has like 6,000 questions. So, but I think we should wind it down. And I don't. I'll just ask because I think this is really the question. We've seen this administration, and I don't expect you guys to say anything about anything political, but we've seen this administration, push away our natural allies, embrace, we saw JD Vance get in front of the G7 and talk about how wonderful Russia and China are. And you already talked about what China's doing. You guys have. Where are we? And the other thing I would add to that statement, where are we from a national defense standpoint is my question. The other thing is I've never thought it's how much money you spend. I've always felt how you spend the money is really critically important. You can plus up a lot of things and let's say, geez, look, we made all these advancements and we put all this money in, but if the money's not spent right, you're no better shape than you were before. In fact, you could be in worse shape. So, from a national defense perspective, and you already said this is a dangerous world we live in. It is. I think it's the most dangerous time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And we've got people using non-classified platforms to send out secret information. But what the hell? We shouldn't worry about that. But where are we at from a national defense perspective? I have my own opinion, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say from the outside looking in.
Yeah, maybe I'll kick this off. Certainly, the world is not exactly safer than it was a couple of years ago or a decade ago. From the national defense perspective, and really the next big signal you ought to be looking for is, the administration is going to release a new national defense strategy, right? So every administration, when they come in, they take a look at, at the world, they take a look at our capabilities, and they put together kind of the strategy, which is supposed to inform operational planning, budgets. It's supposed to provide kind of a guiding light for industry on where we want to be modernizing and investing in. And I suspect you will see in this national defense strategy, which, I suspect will be released in the fall, you'll see a lot of continuity from the last couple of administrations, right? I mean, we know what the PRC is doing. We know what Russia is doing. We certainly know what some of the unsavory actors are doing. And if anything, you will have an amplified sense of urgency. Time will factor into a lot of the decision making, and that will really be the guiding light for defense investments. And to your point, it's not just about how much money we're spending, but what we're getting kind of as a return on investment. So not just what are we buying, but is what we're buying actually enhancing national security? And you started the conversation with how do we bring accountability to this process? You know, uh, Doge. Doge is not over, or the demand for efficiencies and effectiveness and performance on the industrial base, that remains, right? So while Elon Musk may have left the government, I think the demand for accountability, both inside the department at all levels, right? From the tip of the spear out in the field to higher headquarters in DoD, the demand for industry, whether you're a traditional defense prime who's been doing things a certain way, or whether you're uh, the Department of Defense and Congress demand return on investment that makes us safer, and that should be really the criteria for making these investments decisions that are supposed to enhance or implement the national defense strategy.
I think it's fair to say we're going through a stressful time in a lot of our relationships and kind of like how America sees itself in the world. Um, Look, a couple of factors here. Um, what 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 has really made America secure in the past? What has really kept this country going? And yes, we've fought numerous wars at high tolls, but we've largely kept the American people safe in their homes at night. And I can think of a couple things. First of all, just going back a century and more, we've had a huge manufacturing industrial base that can do really incredible things. Build huge ships, advanced airplanes. When it comes to building things, like we've had a fantastic track record as a country. We're sliding a little bit on that. I don't think that there's any way to sum it up that we were number one for a long time. We're not number one now, but there's a lot of interest across the aisle, Democrats, Republicans, average Americans, everybody, about building back some of that capability. Um, we've had tremendous innovation in this country when it comes to the next technology, whether that's used for the benefit of our economy or national security. Nobody innovates like America, and I don't think that's changed. I mean, people may look at China, building this technology and all that stuff, but I think a lot of that comes from American ingenuity, so I don't think that's changed. I would say people. Um, we're an incredibly patriotic country, and every time that this nation has been threatened, there's been and hundreds of thousands of Americans who've signed up to serve in the uniform, and I don't think that's changed at all. I think that patriotism still exists in the U.S. Um, Looking outside the country, one of the greatest strengths that we have is we can form allies, we can form friendships, we can form partnerships with a lot of nations around the world, and our adversaries can't do that. They look on that ability for us to not just go alone, but go with friends, and they're jealous of that. They can't replicate that. So when there's stress in those relationships, that goes to one of the strengths of the United States. Like we got to find a way to build those partnerships. And yeah, the terms might have to change somewhat. We've had an incredibly strong military over, since World War II. We've been the preeminent military in the world. We could do a lot of things for not only our own national security, but the national security of our allies. And look, some of our allies have our closest friends have realized that and come to rely on the U.S. Changing that basis so they have more invested in their own national security is a very reasonable thing to do. But I'm concerned about how we're doing it. This should be a confrontation. This should be us linking arms and moving forward together because the stress that we have between our friends ain't nothing compared to the challenges that we face together. There's a couple of rising global powers out there, whether within their own sphere of influence or worldwide, who want to do things differently. And we and our allies aren't on the same page. We need to be together in countering that. And that might be working together more on military projects. That might be better integrating our economies or just being able to talk about like the vision of a free and secure world that we all share. There's still room to do that, but I am concerned that some of the tone and tenor of how that debate is playing out right now is bruising some feelings, and I'm concerned that the depth of the relationship that we have with a number of our allies just isn't the same right now. That's not to say that change isn't needed, but it's how you make that change that counts a lot.
Marisa, did you have any question that you would like to ask? I'm always hesitant to do this. Uh, Did you
I'm
do?
going to I think that Eric kind of buttoned everything up pretty well. I have a lot more questions, you know I do, but I think we can leave it there for now.
Yeah. Well, I will thank you guys for coming on. We appreciate it. I really appreciate the working relationship we had when I was a U.S. Senator, and I continue to appreciate the friendship we've had since I've uh, been been removed from the United States Senate. And I would say best of luck to you guys and stay in touch. And Maritza will probably have a bunch of questions in writing that she will forward for the record, just so you guys revert back to old times. Okay.
Hey, I gotta tell one quick story that I tell a bunch of
Please.
friends. Okay, so just a little backstory. So I worked for Jon Tester for about a year and a half or so, and that was as he was coming into the role of chairman of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. Spent a lot of time together. He was getting up to speed, asking a ton of questions on all sorts of programs and what's going on in our military and all that. And so we had I'll just say it was a very open relationship. And one thing that I remember was, especially in the summer, Chairman Tester would go back to Montana because he had work to do on the farm. And I would say more often than not, it'd be a Saturday or Sunday morning here in Washington, D.C. It'd be about like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm lazy. I'd just be getting out of bed, and then I'd get a phone call, and it would say, no caller ID. And I'd pick it up, and the first thing I'd hear was a engine in the background, brrr. And the next thing I'd hear is this the Raven? And it would be Chairman Tester, sitting U.S. Senator, leading Congress on how to spend $800 billion in annual funding, sitting on his tractor doing work in Montana, wanting to pick my brain for 45 minutes because he had a little bit of time to kill and decided to do a little double duty, work back home and work on the big issues that he's responsible for. So, hey, I tell that story all the time. But hey, boss, it has been a pleasure working for you. Love the chance to chat a little bit here and absolutely keep in touch. This has been great.
So
All
now I
right,
gotta
Kate.
say something too, because first I thought it was just me. So I'm glad to hear you tortured the Raven as much as you tortured me. But the only thing I would add is, when you call me on a Sunday morning, it was usually like 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning. So I'm not sure why Eric got to sleep in and I didn't. But hey,
Well,
it was a privilege, and it's been great to see you again. I really appreciate the chance to connect again.
I'll
The
tell
other,
you,
the other
he's still up to that. He's still up to that, except for he calls me and says, "Are you out of bed yet?" And the answer is almost always no.
I burning daylight. The best part of the day is going, and you guys ain't out of the sack. I will also point out this to you guys that when I got the Capitol, which is always reasonably early in the morning, and I called your office, you always were working. Very seldom were I able to catch you at your house or on the road. You were already there, which is pretty incredible. You guys logged a lot of hours. You did good work, and you made me look good when because you guys did good work, quite frankly, and we depend upon, for those folks that don't know, the countries, these guys are actually quite old for being for staffers. The country's being run by a bunch of 25-year-olds, but that's okay. That's all right. They do a better job anyway. At any rate, thanks, guys. Thanks for being on. Take care. Be well. Now get out there and get to work. God damn it, day's half over.
I remember one time, I don't know if I was in your office or we were on like a Zoom interview, but you told me after you got that I'm gonna start calling you Mr. Chairman, by the way, Mr. Chairman. After you were the chair and you said, "Hey, I've seen things, I can't tell you about them, but I've seen things that keep me up at night, really." And that stayed with me. I think about that, the amount of information that the 3 of you have seen and processed and that you can't say anything about, it must be stressful. I don't know how I would handle that.
Well, you handle it by, number one, giving direction to how we spend money, so we spend it the right way, and you handle it by not pushing away your traditional friends and allies, because that's one of our biggest strengths, if not our biggest strength, and embracing people who've been trying to destroy you and continue to just try to destroy this country moving forward. And I think the a lot of things were said during that interview, but right at the end, when Erik talked about workforce, and he talked about the industrial base, and he talked about innovation, he also talked about our friends. And I'm telling you that when we do away with things like USAID, that has an impact on our friends. And it doesn't mean you buy your friends, but when people can trust you and know that you're there to help, they're more likely to come to your aid when you need help. And what we've done across the board, whether it's to the European nations or Canada or Mexico, Australia, any of them, I don't think they trust us, not like they used to. And that's very, very, very dangerous. And the administration needs to pull their head out of their ass and get this fixed and get it fixed fast, because quite frankly, without our friends in this nation, we are not that strong. And it becomes a real problem in this world, I should say. Without our friends in this world, we are not that strong. We're severely diminished. We're spending $1 trillion on a defense budget now, so everybody should be happy this is going real with damn little direction, I might add, but that's okay.
Well, that's kinda, I mean, when you talk about our allies and where we are with our standing in the world, and then I've had conversations too where our country seems, from the outside looking in, if you talk to people who live anywhere else, it looks like a lot of chaos right now, whether it's Signalgate, whether it's, the immigration stuff and the protests and sending in, the National
Epstein.
Guard into California, Epstein, the president focusing on adding, making sure Coke has real sugar. I mean, it doesn't like that is a big question is what are our adversaries seeing and are they looking to capitalize on some of the chaos that we're going through as a country right now?
Well, I mean, I think that the answer to that's quite obvious.
Yeah.
You've got a Secretary of Defense, a Secretary of State, and other folks that put classified information on an unclassified platform. We've got everything that's gone on with the tariffs. You've got the president concerned about what the name of the Washington commanders are, and sugar and Coca-Cola and all that stuff. Yeah, damn right. They're like licking their lips, waiting for an opportunity. And like I say, these guys got to straighten up and learn how to fly right. I'm going to tell you, and I'll just say this: this is what happens when you put people who are out of touch with reality, and these are uber rich people in the White House. This is what happens. You become more concerned with shit that don't matter, and you ignore the stuff that really does matter because you've been uh, so removed from reality for your entire life that this is your reality. Has he done some things that are right, the president? Absolutely. But I'm going to tell you, he's done some things that are pretty damn scary too, moving forward.
Well, let's focus on the hopeful. Let's focus on the hopeful. Okay, you're wearing a repeat hat.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Well,
man.
well, I'm going to tell you, It's a great hat. It just kind of fits, it's one of those hats. I'll be honest with you, the woolly hat that I wore here a week or two ago didn't fit so good. It's been
Ah,
it's- this one just kind of puts on your head and it's poof, good to go.
maybe it was your haircut. Oh, we'll tell our listeners who can't see the video. He's wearing a United States Postal Service rural carrier hat. There it is.
Yeah,
And you
that
have a shirt. Is that the Montana Carpenters Union?
yeah. Well, it's probably the National Carpenters, but yeah, I mean,
Does that
I've
say Montana? What's
got-
the insignia says Montana, right?
my God, it does. Yes, it is. It is Montana Carpenters. Yeah.
Look at that. All right. Well, we have yeah, lots of signals here.
It's a black shirt that you wear on a 93-degree day outside. I mean, so, heck,
Are
so
you headed out on the equipment today, or are you gonna sit around the
we're gonna
house again?
harvest we're gonna harvest some peas today. We're taping this on a Good Friday, not Good Friday, but a Good Friday. And I went out and was gonna start yesterday, but I thought, nah, I don't have that many acres to cut, so we'll lop off some peas, see how they go, and harvest will have begun. And then we wait 3 weeks for the spring wheat to get ready. Although it's turning pretty fast right now. So in this heat, the heat today will help. And if we continue to have good heat, it'll move things along pretty rapidly.
Okay, well, I will look for a video of you out harvesting peas in my inbox
Yeah,
later.
I hope I remember,
We'll get someone to remind you. We want to thank our guests for joining us today, Erik Raven and Kate Käufer, who used to work with Chairman Tester, Mr.
um,
Chairman. You can find us, of course, on Substack, Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube. You can shoot us an email at groundedpcast@gmail.com. We've had a few emails this week clamoring for certain guests. I will say we are working on some of those guests, so we will let you know when we book some of them. This works because of the support of people like you watching and listening, and we would love it if you would subscribe. We have a lot more planned for you here in the future. We want to thank our friends at Pearl Jam for letting us use their music. And to all of you, our listeners and our viewers, we will chat again soon.
hell, hell.